Stephen Leto, can see you. Karibuni sana. I'm issuing this statement on behalf of all of us in the team that has now commonly been referred to as the People's Loyal Opposition. So my colleagues are fully behind this statement. Fellow Kenyan patriots, this is entitled Jamhuri Season Address. Today, December the 9th, 2024. I'll repeat, fellow Kenyan patriots, receive this message of seasonal greetings and goodwill wherever you may be in our country and beyond. We thank God that He has enabled us to enter the festive season at the end of the year. Traditionally, our Jamhuri celebrations as Kenyans have usually raised the curtain to a joyous period for the entire global community. Our Jamhuri activities usually flow into an extended season that merges with Christmas and the New Year festivities. It is usually time to forget some of the challenges through the year and to join our friends and families in joyous activities. Accordingly, we send the festive season's greetings to the friends of our Kenyan nation throughout the world. And at this juncture, congratulate the people of Ghana for a tremendous show of democratic achievement. And for President Mahama and the team, we congratulate you and we wish you well together with the great people of Ghana. Nonetheless, we remain conscious of the hard times facing a majority of Kenyans, both as individuals and families this year. It has been a very difficult season marked by huge unemployment, heavy taxation, confusion in healthcare, lack of direction in education because of the unclear direction in the rush implementation of the CBC education, oppressive university education funding, insecurity, impunity, state opulence, and a rigid government that does not listen to anybody. Still, let us not give up on the joy that has traditionally come with the Jamhuri and Christmas season. It is remarkable that this season is also marked by the International Anti-Corruption Day, which is marked today, the 9th December, and the International Human Rights Day, which will be celebrated everywhere in the world tomorrow on December the 10th. Then there is also the climax of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which has gone on for slightly over 2 weeks now. Put together with Jamhuri Day on Thursday this week, this is a truly significant season. We are called upon to solemnly reflect about the import and wider relevance of some of these remarkable days as citizens of our country and citizens of the greater global community. We are especially called upon to do an honest audit of our performance as a Kenyan nation in all the spaces that are being celebrated this week. What is the reading of our human rights record? For instance, what are we doing about winning the war against gender-based violence? What is the state of our self-determination as an independent nation? And what have been the dividends of independence through the years? What gains have been made, if any, under the Kenya Kwanza regime? How have state authorities cushioned the citizens to give them meaningful comfort in what is traditionally a season of celebration after odious labor throughout the year? We regret that little of the ending year has brought us any good as a people. Our collective national life has been troubles, nothing but troubles. There is indeed very little to celebrate under the Kenya Kwanza regime that must make the heroes of our independence turn in their graves. The present regime stands for negations and reversals of all the promises and hopes of Jamhuri in 1963. The founders of our nation freed us from the yoke of oppression and colonialism. This regime is keenly bent on reversing this gain by restoring both physical and psychological torture. Our human rights record is at an all-time low. Good governance, as promised under self-determination, is in a terrible spin. Violence against women and the exclusion in important spheres is at an all-time high. An average of cases, 196 of gender-based violence against women are reported every day. When this should be the week of celebration, therefore, it can at best be only a week of grave reflection. We are doing poorly, indeed most poorly, under the current self-serving regime. Everyone knows that Kenyans are plowed through a very difficult season of gloom and of despair. The Kenya Kwanza regime has been at once mischievous, ruthlessly self-serving, and intentionally oppressive. Its policies and practices throughout the year have been gleeful, happy-go-lucky, and autocratic. The year began with state agencies selling to farmers fake fertilizers. Do we remember, Kenyans? This happened amidst deafening silence from the national executive. And when they finally spoke, they did so to rationalize and justify fraud against the citizens of Kenya. Bad seed was also sold to our farmers during the planting season. The most responsible perpetrators in all these fraudulent designs and activities got away scot-free, abetted by the state. Remember, even genetically modified foodstuffs are with us. In the wake of the fakery around fertilizers and seeds, Kenyans also suffered a thorough beating by Mother Nature. Floods hit many parts of our country. Kenyans drowned in flood waters as the state looked on, unmoved. And when it intervened, it was to pull down people's homes. Remember, Madare. Remember. Without any effort at all to give them the comfort of alternative shelter. The Kenyan state reported that it had set aside hundreds of billions of shillings as floods disaster management funds. To date, we don't know what happened to those monies. Images of marooned families in the middle of heavy downpours and floods still haunt the conscience of men and women of goodwill. Forced demolitions still continue even today under one pretext or the other. The objective is to grab public land under the amorphous so-called, I quote unquote, affordable housing project. This project is shrouded in blatant opaqueness. This can only speak to corruption in high places in a compromised national state. Unfortunately, when Kenyans ask questions about this opaque project, they're accused of being unpatriotic, tribal, hostile to the government, and idle. Indeed, wenye upepo mbaya. Both the opacity and the hostility by the state against inquiry speak to only one thing: corruption. We have bad news for President William Ruto and his pawns. No amount of blackmail or intimidation will make us relent on asking questions about corruption in our country. We are going to talk about corruption, and we are going to fight it too. Like we did. We went to court against the Andani JKI takeover. No amount of threats, intimidation, abductions, and disappearances, or even killings, will stop us from demanding accountability. We are not just asking, we actually demand accountability. It is in accordance with the rule of law, in accordance with our Constitution 2010. It has also been a season of confusion and unrest in our schools, in our hospitals, and in our universities. Moi University is a glaring example of misrule. We have seen confusion in our airports and across the counties, all owing to what can only be described as felonious conduct by Kenya's national executive. Professional staff in these places have spent months at a time on strike. The government has failed to honor legitimate collective bargaining agreements with teachers, with university lecturers, with doctors and other health workers, as well as with university staff. Other Kenyans have gone on strike out of fear of loss of jobs and livelihoods due to reckless decisions and actions by a short-sighted and uncaring government that entered into such shameful deals as the obscure Adani tenders. There are such fears in the Airports Authority and among members of the now defunct National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF. Meanwhile, the Social Health Authority, SHA, that replaced NHIF, is in a state of thorough confusion. Kenyans are dying every day for want of health care because of the confusion in SHA. Was this SHA intended in the first place as a scam? Almost as if it has been in the grip of some mysterious forces from the spiritual world, Kenya Kwanza is visiting untold atrocities upon its citizens. This has been the season of abduction, disappearance, torture, and killing of Kenyan youth. In all this, the government has feigned ignorance. The year we are about to end will be recorded for the battering in the streets and for the killing of our Gen Z youth. Their only sin was that they came out to exercise democratic self-expression and to stage peaceful protests against an untrustworthy regime that has gone rogue. And how did the regime act? They did a parallel of goons to turn otherwise peaceful, legitimate protests upside down. Our youth protested against oppressive tax policies and against bad financial laws and practices. They demonstrated against shameless displays of opulence and of corruption in high places in government. For this, they were battered, their heads were violently opened in the streets. Those pictures outside the National Assembly are still fresh in the minds of Kenyan parents. Their lives were taken away in the prime of youth. They were shoved into gunny bags and thrown into dump sites like bad rubbish. What government does this anywhere in the world in the 21st century? I recall when we had to go and join the people of Embakasi South and witness that terrible, terrible sight. If it was a responsible government, by now they would have sent the Army, National Youth Service to clean up that mess. But do they care? This regime is determined to reverse the democratic gains that Kenyans have made over the years. It has captured the legislature and reduced it to a cheap rubber stamp for the executive. And today, it is busy stalking the judiciary with the same intents. We hail Kenyan youth for standing up to this oppressive and corrupt regime. We assure them that they are not alone. They are our children. Their welfare is of the greatest import to all of us. We shall not look on as their future is stolen from them by an uncaring regime. We are going to fight for you and with you, especially in the new year. To that extent, we will give direction not too long from now. Prepare for the start of what I call the final liberation of our country. We are sending a warning to the abductors and to the killing squads. The writing is on the wall. Your days are truly numbered. We intend to stop you, and indeed we shall stop you. For we have the cause to stop you, the will and the means also to stop you. While all indicators show that Kenya is on the wrong path, our sovereignty is not debatable, and it shall not be debatable. We shall regain our country from those who have conspired to steal our sovereignty, our resources, and our heritage. And for their own good, and for avoidance of any doubt, those who have conspired with the regime to steal from Kenyans should actually stay warned. You have targeted our strategic national resources and our assets, and we are targeting you. You have engaged in irregular deals with the Kenya Kwanza regime at your own risk. For this regime's days are numbered. As indeed has been indicated, the wind of change across the African continent, and indeed the whole world, from Bangladesh to now Ghana to Botswana, even recently in Namibia, where they ended up with the First Lady President. So, when they are over, Kenyans will not honor any irregular, illegal, or unconstitutional contracts, debts, business arrangements, or any other corrupt undertakings with any entity, local or foreign. Equally, state officials and public officials who have connived with local and foreign criminal gangs to loot our resources or have led to loss of our resources also should stay warned. Forensic investigations in your unlawful activities, as well as other special investigations in state capture, shall be conducted against you and against your partners in crime. To end the culture of corruption and impunity, we are going to deal with you firmly and decisively when the day comes, and I must give you some comfort, all in accordance with the rule of law. Elsewhere, we continue monitoring Kenya's performance on the international scene with mounting concern and bated breath. The debacle in Haiti, especially an area of prime distress. Our police officers are in that country almost like hired mercenaries. Remember, there was a court ruling against that deployment that's never, to the best of my knowledge, been lifted. Kenya Kwanza defied all the voices of reason, including court advisory, to send our officers to Haiti. This kind of impunity is hugely reprehensible. We cannot allow our country to become a rogue state on the international scene. We are closely looking into the matter of deployment to Haiti and will address it more comprehensively in the new year. Closely related to this is the fact that under Kenya Kwanza, our country is now gaining the dubious distinction and outrage of abducting foreign nationals on our soil and deporting them in sinister circumstances against all the known international norms. Kenya Kwanza began bringing us into disrepute in diplomacy from day one. This is a matter that calls for urgent correction. We are going to push for this to happen even before this regime leaves the stage. Fellow Kenyans, these are only a few among so many concerns in our country today. In a few days' time, they will paint a rosy picture of non-existent achievements over the past 2 years. As this regime has now distinguished itself as an edifice of dry-eyed lies, we urge you to ignore them with the contempt they deserve, knowing well that liberation is never too far. Our day as Kenyans is coming. Otherwise, we wish you a peaceful and reflective festive season. May God bless you. May God bless our country, Kenya. Amen.